Shiro here from Umbra Games with a review of Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance, available for PS4, PS5, Xboxes, and PC. The game was developed by Tuque Games and published by Wizards of the Coast, released June 21st, 2021, played on an Xbox Series X using Game Pass for the review. Man, when Dark Alliance was first announced, it was either during some award show or E3 or something. I remember being very cautiously stoked because, if you remember, there was a fantastic Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance game, and a sequel, back in the PS2 OG Xbox GameCube era, developed by Snowblind Studios. I was primarily a console gamer. In my youth, it was the best dungeon-crawling action RPG I had encountered. It also recently saw a digital-only re-release on modern consoles. But knowing that Snowblind Studios proper had been gone for some years, merged in with WB Studios' Monolith Productions, I believe, and seeing a new developer attached to this, I wasn't really sure what we were going to get, especially with the announcement trailer being fully cinematic. Closer to launch date, we got a small glimpse of some gameplay, a third-person over-the-shoulder style beat-em-up, featuring 4 heroes from R.A. Salvatore's Forgotten Realms series, and some very obnoxious ogres. Now, I'm probably going to butcher names in any parts of stories or epics here I talk about, because I haven't dabbled much in Salvatore's work here. But one of the central prominent characters is Drizzt Do'Urden, and he has some companions that fight with him during these crystal wars that are the main focus of the game. You can play as Drizzt with his dual swords, Catti-brie the Archer, Bruenor a dwarf, and Wolfgar, a human warrior wielding a giant warhammer. You can play the game single player and switch between characters, or play as we did in 4-player co-op. I usually like to roll mage, but there's an absence of that here. Otherwise, I like to play ranged, but I lost the draw on that and got Wolfgar. So that's what you'll see in the gameplay videos here. The hub, where you'll spend time between missions, sorting gear, visiting the merchant, upgrading things, and choosing your next adventure, is called Kelvin's Cairn. Base game has 8 campaigns, each with 3 stages selectable from a map. You can unlock and pick difficulties based on your combat rating, a score derived from a combination of your gear and stats. Not all acts are available from the start, but you always get a choice on what you want to do next. Levels can be replayed indefinitely, and have a handy clock rating to show the approximate relative time it will take to complete one. Once a stage is selected, you jump into the teleporter and go. Stages 1 and 2 of each act have sub-objectives, finding dwarf steins, breaking urns, or destroying banners, and some also have hidden mini-bosses you'll have to search the land for. You'll have a waypoint leading you in the main quest direction, which makes it easier to figure out which way not to go if you want to do some exploring. You'll find gold in chests and bags, crystal nodes that can be broken for upgrade crystals, and treasure chests containing gear drops. Money and crystals are automatically divvied among your party members, but if a chest or enemy drops a piece of gear, everyone has to make the journey to grab it. Also, if you get too far apart from each other, the game will teleport everyone to the host. Stages also feature some puzzles, mostly finding and hitting correct panels with runes that match signs in the environments. Puzzles often lead to bonus attribute points. There are several trap mechanics, like finding a fire sword to make you warm enough to run over patches of ice spikes, beds of poison and enemies that still poison you even if there's no poison cloud animation, for a really long bout of poison, and some various magic traps you can't see, but will signal a warning when you walk over. Each character has their own set of moves, and there are actually quite a few that end up being opened. At a basic level, you use right bumper and right trigger as your light and strong attack, respectively, and then do variations of pressing forward or backwards before or after moves. Wolfgar, for example, back and right trigger would break down an enemy's blocking bar instantly. Forward and right trigger was a giant golf swing. You also can equip 2 special abilities at a time on unique cooldowns. You start with 2 open, and it's quite a while before you get your next 2. These abilities are used by pressing Y or holding down Y. You have consumables you can unlock and upgrade, and most are buffing or healing related, but there is also an alchemist firebomb. I'm still not quite sure what did it, but there are team attack opportunities that will flash up on your screen so you can press Y plus B and do a solo attack. So yeah, first off, team attack seems a bit misguided of a term, as it's a unique solo attack you can do for that brief window of opportunity. And as I said, I'm still unclear what made that happen, but if I had to guess, I'd have to say killing the last enemy in an encounter is the main way, because that's when that really seemed to pop up, once all enemies were dead and we had no one to use it on. Seriously, I'd say more than half the time. Each character also has an ultimate move, pushing both sticks in. The bar fills up during normal combat and can be unleashed to devastating effects. Honestly, sometimes a little too devastating, killing bosses in the blink of an eye when one, or especially more of us, would trigger it at the same time. I do have to throw in here, there's some noticeable lag between when you push a button and when your character attacks, and when your character hits something and that thing reacts. Unfortunately, this also bleeds over into trying to dodge an enemy's attack, especially a giant AoE, when you're clearly out of the way, but the damage is already done. You can see this lag by just simply going up to a destructible object and slashing it, and it looks like it thinks a few seconds on whether or not it wants to be destroyed and then just gives in. I wish I could say this is during busy times with a lot of things going on, but even in the hub, When you hit your menu button, you almost hit it again half the time because it doesn't seem like it registered. This also really affects double face button moves, pressing X plus A together for example, which I think most characters have a move that does that, as well as the Y plus B I mentioned of the team attack. We all complained multiple times about X and A just hitting A and making our character jump, often at the least opportune times in battle, opening us up to more attacks. I did some testing one session in the hub, just hitting those two buttons together over and over, and about 1 in 5, yeah, it jumped instead. In a game where combat is the highlight, this kind of lag is less than ideal. Gear comes in the usual colored rarity assortment, gray, green, blue, purple, and orange. Gear also has a level from 1 to 3 and seems to be procedurally generated with its stats. Gear can be upgraded using crystals and money to give it a small stat point boost. You have to use the matching loot rarity color of the crystal in your upgrade, and you can also trade lower rarity crystals for higher in matching sets with some cash. You can sell gear you don't need for gold as well. True gear upgrades were kind of a common complaint among the group as well. I mean, I'm sure it's balanced so you can't get overpowered on lower difficulties, so loot kind of reaches a ceiling, and maybe that drop gets better the higher you go. But as we pressed on harder difficulties, it really just seemed to be a slider, giving enemies more health, and just kind of made the game more tedious. At several points during a stage, you can choose to take a short rest and regain your health and you get your consumables restored, or skip it and take a loot rarity bonus, which we did almost all of the time, still just really didn't have much luck. The loot sets are pretty diverse though, coming in various styles and materials, and you can also change the visual skin of most sets for a small fee at the merchant. Story-wise, there's a ton of collectibles you can find, tablets, scrolls, reliefs that fill up your journal section with tons of great writing and story info. Unfortunately, if you're playing in a group of 4 in limited sessions, you're likely not going to take the time to stop and read it all, and the game really doesn't do too much to push non-reading story. So if you're not familiar with the source material and these characters, and you don't feel like reading while you're playing, you're not going to get too in-depth of a story here. There's a bad guy, he does some stuff, and you need to go take him out in the last act of every campaign. The cutscenes were both dark and lighthearted, with, for example, an ogre flipping you the finger after he's knocked into a pool of lava, and other mischief, that I can't really say I've seen that before in this type of world. It was worth a chuckle. The voice acting for the 4 playable characters was solid, and if we knew a little bit more about their history and what was going on, their well-written and timely banter between missions would have even been more potent. Environmentally, wow, they had some great concept and environmental artists working on this game, no doubt. From icy mountains to dwarven mines, there was a lot to take in. As mentioned, the gear design was diverse, and enemy design was pretty good too. But oof, those elevators. Frame rate drops and weird gravity, it was definitely an immersion breaker every time. Overall, there's a lot here. I just really seemed to need a couple extra top tier developers working on it or something. The game had lots of parts that were so close to making this game good, but just ended up falling short. Disappointingly so. It is fully multiplayer co-op with 4 unique characters. Your combat just wasn't as responsive as you'd want in a beat 'em up, both in button response and entity reaction, but the movesets were great. Stages felt huge with optional side paths and objectives. Gear was well designed, but we felt stuck in a rut with upgrades. Dialogue was well written and acted, but most of the story is locked behind collectibles that you have to read. Rated as a 3D beat 'em up, Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance receives a 55 out of 100 on my 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is an average game. This is Jiro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.